effect.
This is the Earth. The Earth is surrounded by its atmosphere, which is like a man wearing a helmet. As you can see, at the moment, the Earth is quite happy. If we put more gases into the air by burning fossil fuels, driving cars, using certain aerosols, we change the state of our atmosphere. All these extra gases stop the heat that normally escapes, and our Earth starts to warm up. Just like being in a greenhouse.
The rays of the sun carry its heat and its light to the surrounding planets. This is the energy which makes life possible on Earth. But unfortunately, most planets are in no position to use it. Mercury, a baked lump of rock only 36 million miles from the sun, is scorched by its heat. Saturn, a huge ball of gases 892 million miles from the sun, is too far away and too cold. On the other hand, Earth, our planet, a convenient 94 million miles from the sun, happens to be well placed. The extremes of temperature between winter and summer, which we complain about so much, are, compared with other planets, not really extreme at all. Up to now, our climate has been stable, with relatively small variations of temperature. We are lucky to be provided with an environment which is both safe to live in and rich in food. The even temperature of our Earth is controlled by a layer of gases which surround the planet, but which you cannot see. The gases, which prevent too much heat from the sun getting in and too much heat from the Earth getting out, act rather like a greenhouse, where instead of panes of glass, there are gases. When the glass is well fitted and none is missing, the greenhouse provides a warm and even temperature for special plants which otherwise would die. We and all life on our planet are protected in the same way. This old greenhouse is badly damaged, but the plants will not die because they're being moved out to a new greenhouse while the old one is rebuilt. Unfortunately, we can do this with plants, but we cannot do it with people. We have nowhere else to go. The greenhouse of gases which surrounds the Earth is the only protection we have, but now it is not working as well as it should. As we continue to pollute the atmosphere, we are altering the gases. The sun's heat can still pass through this layer, but when it bounces back from the Earth's surface, some of it gets trapped under the gases instead of escaping out into space. The result is global warming, which could soon mean a rise in temperature of about 3 degrees.
Your viewers may not feel that 3 degrees is anything. But if everybody knows that the last ice age, which was 10,000 years ago, was lower than today by 5 degrees centigrade. So 5 degrees centigrade put us in the ice age. 5 degrees centigrade changed the whole world, the whole Earth surface into what we are doing now. 3 degrees would be a major change on the global level.
The gases which are leading to global warming cannot all be avoided. In the east, rice paddy fields give off methane, and in the west, a lot of methane comes from cows. One of the problems is that growing rice and producing milk is often the only means of survival for small communities, and it would be difficult to take their livelihoods away. It is also not possible to alter the behavior of the cows. They ferment food in their stomachs and then produce methane gas from both ends.
Salut, messieurs. Vous savez pas quoi faire ce matin? Allez.
There are other gases which can and must be avoided. Chlorofluorocarbons, known as CFCs, are particularly harmful, not just because of their uses, But because out of all the greenhouse gases, they are the ones which last the longest in the atmosphere. They have been used in aerosols, refrigerators and plastic foam. But because they cause global warming and harm the ozone layer, international agreements are at last being made to phase them out. Carbon dioxide, produced mainly by burning fossil fuels, is responsible for at least 50% of the damage to our greenhouse. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, has been steadily building up in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. It was particularly bad in Victorian times, when labour was cheap and so was fuel. For years, the driving force of industry was coal burnt to produce steam, but the cost in terms of pollution was enormous. This steam locomotive, in service about 50 years ago, is converting at best 17% of the heat from the coal into power. Most of the energy is going up the chimney in the form of wasted heat and polluting smoke. The age of steam has gone, but we continue to produce vast quantities of carbon dioxide, both from industry and from cars. The forests, which in the past soaked up much of this gas, are being destroyed. Global warming is set to increase. A small rise in temperature will change the ecology of the planet. It will cause problems with food production for some countries, but could help others. The prairies of North America could become too hot for growing wheat, but the same farming may then take place on the cold plains of northern Russia. People get food from different places, but animals may not be able to do the same. As the seasons change, the caribou follow set routes in search of food. Like every species, they have developed a particular way of life which enables them to survive. Will they have time to change their habits and find other food before they starve? Global warming could also bring some areas more frequent and more severe droughts. This is a computer prediction made by NASA, the American Space Agency. The areas shown in brown are likely to suffer most over the next 70 years.
If we continue down the path of business as usual, increasing emissions of these greenhouse gases, by the middle of next century, the warming will be at a level which the Earth has not experienced since the age of the dinosaurs.
This is Rajasthan, a part of India which is bound to be affected. The crops have failed 3 times in 4 years. Cattle scavenge for the few plants which remain. Women walk miles for firewood and water. With global warming, this community, which is now just holding on, would cease to exist. Another serious consequence would be floods. In the past, they were caused by freak weather conditions. Now, global warming could raise the temperature of the sea, which would expand the volume of the water so that it took up more space. It could also melt polar ice. A general rise in sea level, combined with freak weather conditions, will threaten any city near the sea and any low-lying countryside like East Anglia. It will also threaten most of Holland. These fields, known as polders, are in fact below sea level. The Dutch have reclaimed them from the sea, pumped them dry and turned them into farms. They would certainly be at risk.
This is the map of the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands are living about 12 million people. And in the light-colored part of our land, the part below sea level, are living about 8 million people. If this coastline with dunes and dikes should broken, the coastline from the Netherlands should be this. And That's the reason why we spent a lot of money on the security of our coast.
The dikes which protect the polders are watched over by local farmers. In 1959, a freak storm caused the sort of floods which could take place if global warming continues. Marco Romain, a farmer, remembers it well.
We go to the dike and see that the level of the sea was very high and the water comes over the dike. And one moment later, the dike breaks. A wall of water, and it's a wall of water of 3 meters to 3 meters high, comes into the polder and destroyed in a moment all houses. People, there wasn't change for the people who lived in the polder to save their life. But that was impossible. Only the people who lived near the village, and the village is built on a little hill, could save their life on that hill. All people, especially children who must go to school, are evacuated to other parts of the Netherlands. The men who are from 20 till 40 works 9 months long on the dike to make again a good dike and to close the break in the dike. And after 9 months, all people come back to live here again on their own place below the level of the sea. But we aren't afraid. We aren't afraid to live here.
Holland is a rich country, and the Dutch are used to fighting the sea. For the safety of their country, they have invested huge sums of money in massive engineering works. This barrier is at the mouth of the Rhine. The gates, now in the raised position, are wide enough to allow a large ship to pass underneath. There are no big boulders in Holland. The Dutch buy them from Germany and import them by train. They also make huge concrete blocks. The concrete blocks and the boulders are there for one purpose: to be dropped into the sea and act as defences. It is possible to guard against floods, if you can afford to do it. This is Bangladesh. 4/5 of the country is situated in flat river deltas and is frequently flooded. With little money, this is the sort of country which will suffer most if the sea rises.
What we are trying now is a very temporary measure. In case there is 1 or 2 centimeter increase in the water, we'll be able to hold it. But if there is any substantial rise, I would say only God can help us.
The coast of Bangladesh is so low that even a small rise in sea level can cause a major disaster. In 1987, 24 million people, 1/5 of the entire population, lost their homes. In a world which is warmer and sea levels higher, the prospect for these people is grim. There have been many world conferences about global warming and levels of carbon dioxide. This one, attended by 17 nations, met in Washington, but like many others, it got nowhere. America, the most powerful industrial nation in the world, gets 50% of its own electricity from coal, and the most common means of transport is the car. In the United States, CO2 levels cannot be reduced without harming the economy. The president was sympathetic about the problem, but absolutely nothing was decided. On the other side of the world, there is another objection to cutting down carbon dioxide. This is Singrauli, the energy capital of India. 5 coal-fueled power stations are throwing carbon dioxide into the air. Below ground, there are coal resources of billions of tons. India is determined to modernize the country and catch up with the West, even if it means causing pollution with plants which the West has provided.
If you make us buy something, then 2 years later you say that we're so sorry, we suddenly discovered this technology is not good enough. Now you buy something else. Where will we buy it? We're staggering under an enormous debt anyway. We have 30% of our money is going in just paying the foreign debt. We have to cut back on essentials of food and food distribution systems to pay the West back its money. And now you want to add to our burden by saying, oh, we suddenly woke up and decided that CO2 levels are unacceptable all over the world, therefore you cut back.
In the Eastern European countries, which are now emerging from communism, there are the same sort of difficulties. This is Poland. In parts of the country, the farmers still live and work like they did 100 years ago. The communists wanted to modernize the country, so they took farm laborers and put them to work in huge industrial plants. This one was out of date when it was built. It and others like it are making Poland the most polluted country in Europe and a major contributor to global warming. This steelworks and many others in Eastern Europe are causing damage to the planet. They are an important part of the economy, but should they be allowed to continue?
We can't play games, we can't gamble with our lives. We have very serious stakes in the changing climate that we cannot afford not to start today. And when I mean today, I mean it. I say today and I mean today. Tomorrow may be a little late.
If global warming is to be reduced, the old polluting industries of the poor countries must be replaced with the new technology of the West. But who is going to pay? The Poles, like the other Eastern European countries, are economically poor and have no money to spend. Their industry is inefficient and brings them little income. They spend their time queuing in food shops where there's hardly anything to buy. In every part of the world there are people who are less well off and are hoping to improve their lot. They need to build new industries, and inevitably this means more greenhouse gas. For them to do this, and for the sake of the planet, should we cut down the amount of greenhouse gas which we in the West produce? Should the richer countries make a sacrifice and give up some of their own economic growth?
How many more TVs and fridges do you need? How many more of these things do you want? I think in the Scandinavian countries, they've been talking about this for many years. There's been a long debate in Sweden and Denmark that growth just for its own sake is simply not enough. It doesn't make for long-term happiness. So I'm hopeful that with the growing understanding of pollution, and frankly, the advice that scientists are saying that we do have to act, and if that causes fear amongst the general public and population, and hopefully spurs them to action, well to the good. But ultimately, it actually talks about getting back, I suppose, to the roots which we've tended to lose, which is understanding that we're not distant from the planet. We're actually entirely dependent on that very thin layer of soil